And yes.
And make a motion on the requisitions.
And yes.
And I do have an add-on. I have a resolution approving appropriation adjustment within Board of Elections Fund 11011-300.
So moved.
And yes.
And that's all I have.
Microphone. Oh, we good. Very good. We've got a investment advisory board meeting.
Over there on the mic, maybe you stand.
Treasurer Wright, good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Just wanted to report there's no significant news. Our yields are holding up, and we continue to monitor the portfolio and move forward with action there. We total about just under 360 million in continuing assets, and our yield, according to Meter, is just over 2.4% on the portfolio at this point.
Did we extend maturities when rates spike so much for the most part?
We did move maturities out. Our average duration now is 2.4 years. So we're in a nice spot. We've been buying stuff longer and shorter so that we come up with a middle maturity, but lock in some of the yields that have been available for a longer period of time.
I appreciate your update emails that you send regularly. That's helpful. Thank you.
Certainly will continue to try to do that.
How's Star Ohio paying?
They're just under, right at 5% functionally. LCNB has for the last month or so, been willing to match that rate, and so we have not had to transfer money back and forth. As you know, we're at our low spot for cash available outside the portfolio now because collection has just started for the first half, and so you always worry about whether we're going to have enough money before the money starts rolling in, but we haven't really had to worry about that going back and forth from Star to our
Do we
check.
have, I mean, is Meter completely discretionary, or are they making every buy and sell decision?
They are making the buy and sell decisions, but they're also talking with me regularly about what and why.
I think we might want to consider, extending where we can, simply because they are going to theoretically cut this year at some point.
We have been buying some things that are 4 and 5 years out there, but balancing that with shorter terms as a year or so.
All right. Awesome.
Thank you.
Appreciate the update.
Thank you.
I'll let you get to more important things.
Very good. Now we have a public hearing to consider increase to the water and sewer rates, fees, and charges for 2024, 25, and 26. Mr. Roush, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for the time this morning. We have put together a small, short presentation that talks about our rate increases, and we're prepared to go through that presentation. It'll probably take a couple minutes to go through that, and then I guess open it up to public comments. So these are the rates that we presented to the board back in October. So what we're looking at is, in summary here, shown on the slide, we're looking at a base rate for the water side, $5 a bill, and then on the sewer side, a base rate of $2.50 per bill. Again, I want to remind the board that we bill every other month, so in reality, that's $2.50 a month, and then $1.25 for the sewer side. The rate increases, the user rate increases for the water will be we're recommending a 7.5% increase for the next 3 years on the water side. And then on the sewer side, we're looking at a rate increase of 7% this year, 5% in 2025, and 3% in 2026. What does that, well, so in summary, this is a graph that shows our base rates over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Back in 2014, 2015, 2016, we had a base rate of $2.50 on the sewer bills. And then in in 2017, and we switched that over to the water side, where it was $7.50 between 2017 to last year, 2023. But if you remember, the last 2 years, we covered that base rate, the board covered that base rate by using ARPA funds. So it gave a break to our customers. And then, so what we're asking for is restoring that rates, keeping that same rate of $7.50 per bill, but splitting that up between the water side and the sewer side. So on the water side, it'd be $5. On the sewer side, it's $2.50. So really, this is no change in the base rate that we're asking for. We're asking just to shift that money around. On the sewer side, you'll see, or on the user rates, you'll see a graph here that shows the increase. Over the last, I want to say 6-7 years, we have not increased the sewer rate at all. So we've been flat the last 6 or 7 years. And so we're asking for an increase in that rate. And then the increase in the water rate will be slightly higher than the sewer rate, and that's shown in the graph here. How does that affect our ranking when we compare ourselves to other entities? It really doesn't change our ranking in that survey that you see annually from PICWA. We may drop down a step at the most if nobody else changes their rates, but we're still the least expensive water utility in Southwest Ohio. So when you look at the ranking here on the water survey, the only entities that are comparable to us in this region is Claremont County, Middletown, and Hamilton. Butler County is a little more expensive than us. You've got Dayton, who's a little more expensive, Cincinnati Water Works. So changing the rate, what you see in the yellow is where we're at now, and then when we move to these new rates this year, we'll be in the orange. So we may drop down a step, and this is on the water side. And on the sewer side, it's the same thing. We're still like right now we're the 4th least expensive entity in the area. If we adopt these rates and nobody else increases their rates, which is unlikely, we may go from 4th to 6th in the area, least expensive. So what does this mean to our customers? You know, we have a minimum water bill and a minimum sewer bill. So there's the customers who receive a minimum bill, their minimum bill in 2024 would be $35.32. And then it will increase slightly in 2025 and 2026. So essentially, if you have water and sewer, it comes out to be roughly a little over $1 a day. So, which is still, you know, about the cheapest utility your cheapest utility bill out there. I'm sure you pay less for water and sewer than you do for trash or internet or phone service or electric. So we're still probably the cheapest utility bill out there that our customers pay. Why are we increasing this? Because all our costs have increased over the last 3 or 4 years. You know, everything that we pay for has gone up, from electricity to chemical costs to labor. And here's a graph showing some of those increases that we've incurred since 2022. You know, our utilities have increased from $700,000 to $1.4 million. That's how much the increase is over the last 4 years. You know, our main break restorations, the cost to restore and go out and repair main breaks has increased. Our debt service, we've incurred more debt because we built more assets. We built some treatment plants. So our debt service has increased. So all our increase, you know, everything that you experience, you know, running your household, you know, utilities, electric costs, all the things that you incur over the last 4 years, we've incurred it, but even more, because the rate increases that we pay for what we buy, our goods that we buy is a little bit different than what you buy from your household. We're buying like bulk chemicals, we're buying construction materials, and all those items have increased at a higher rate than what you've incurred, you know, at the grocery store. So your increase in the grocery store has probably been like 5 or 6%, you know, or 7%, What we're saying, what we're buying has increased even more. It's been 7, 8, 9% because it's tied to construction. And a lot of those costs have gone up more than what the consumer costs have gone up.
So you're saying we were not exempt from the inflationary pressures that were
Oh, no.
handed down from Washington?
No, I mean, we're still seeing those increases. So those items have not come down in cost because the demand for construction materials and chemicals continues to be high. So that has affected our bottom line. So when you look at our revenue and our expenses, what you see circled in 2023, this is where we have spent more in 2023 last year than what we took in. So we've had to make up that difference, which is on the water side, it's been $850,000. We had to make up that difference in our spending versus our taking in by pulling from our reserve funds. So we're actually taking money from our capital funds and moving it to operations, and which is awful for us because we've got all these capital projects that need to be done. We've got water line replacements, we've got additional facilities that we need to build, but we're not having enough revenue to sustain that. So we're having to pull money from our capital funds and push it into our operations. And that's the first time in the last 20 years that we've had to do that. So it's telling us we need to raise our rates so that we can at least break even in our operations side. So that's what you see here in the graph here, 2023. And then by increasing these rates, we're hoping to break even in 2024, and then in 2025, and then in 2026, what you see is we'll hopefully get a larger margin as we purchase less water from Cincinnati Water Works. So that margin will allow us to complete a lot of our capital projects that we have on the books.
And where can we flip the switch on Cincinnati Water in the southern part of the county? When are we looking at doing that?
That's 2025. That's what you see here. At the end of 2025, our contract with Cincinnati Water Works expires. And we're scrambling right now to get these capital projects done to allow us to do that. We still have probably $5 million worth of water line, 24-inch main that has to be laid. We've got the Wellfield project, the Middletown Junction Wellfield project expansion that we're doing, and then we have to put in ion exchange reactors at our Reniker facility. So those three things that we're trying to tackle in the next 2 years in order for us to flip that switch and get that cost savings.
And since we're fortunate enough to have a bunch of residents that are probably like, what do you mean Cincinnati Water Works? A little bit of the history is that in the southern part of the county was not equipped to provide water along Fields Erdel, Deerfield Township, that whole area. So decades ago, the county entered into an agreement with Greater Cincinnati Water Works to buy water.
Wholesale water.
Wholesale water. And that rate is substantially higher than what we could produce it for ourselves. That contract is expiring in 2025, and so for the last decade, we've been preparing to flip the switch to where now we have the infrastructure to lower that cost indefinitely once we start providing the water to those customers ourselves, correct?
That's correct, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get more financially healthy by doing that, and then our margins increase, and then we can take that margin and reinvest it back into our system.
So essentially, we're spending capital dollars on something that we are buying from someone else, which is very expensive right now, but then once that happens and the capital, it's for the most part one-time capital expenditures, once that happens, then forever, moving forward, our rate of providing that to all of those customers is going to be at our rate, which is substantially less than what Cincinnati Water Works charges us, correct?
That's correct. Right now, we buy water from Cincinnati Water at a higher rate than we sell it to our customers. So the remainder, so
So we
those,
lose money on every gallon
every gallon.
that we buy from them.
That's right. And that difference is made up by customers where we produce our own water. So it's subsidized by those customers.
Thank you for mentioning that. You know that's a bone of contention for me.
It's not just you. Yes. So we're getting there. I mean, we've been working diligently. Our staff has been awesome at getting these projects done. And we're trying to stay on track with that, so. On the sewer side, again, it's the similar situation here where last year, 2023, we spent $1.1 million more than what we took in from our customers. So that's where these rate increases that we're proposing will help us get back in track so that we're at least making a little margin. We're trying to, raise more money than what we spend there. So that's hopefully in 2024, 25, 26, we'll get that boat righted with these rate increases.
But in reality, we're not trying to run this like a business with a profit motive. By statute, for the most part, we try to break even and then accumulate a rainy day fund, which we've actually been dipping into, that protects this enterprise, which is water and sewer. It's not part of the rest of the general fund. This has its own operating structure, expenses, and revenue.
Yes, we receive no money from the general fund, and this is more or less run as a nonprofit. We try to, we're not trying to make, we'd like to have some revenues to cover those rainy day expenses, but, and our margins are pretty tight. We run them pretty tight. And any excess that we have that you see in here where we raise more money than we spend, that excess money gets funneled back into our capital infrastructure.
Which we use to fund projects in the future.
Fund projects,
To water lines that break and all that type of stuff.
That's right. So, when a pump fails, when a treatment plant gets tired, we take that money that we've saved and reinvest it into that infrastructure.
So Chris, my question is, with respect to water, and the relief from the contract with Cincinnati Water Works allows for the operating revenue to be, in '26, you're projecting substantially higher than the cost, allowing you to once again be able to put the delta away for capital improvements. We don't have that similar situation here, and with what you're projecting on the sewer side, I'm just seeing really tight margins.
That's right.
And knowing the amount of capital projects that on the sewer side we need as well as on the water side, does that concern you that there's not that built-in margin, or do you think on the water side you'll have enough margin in '26 to address both water and sewer?
No, so they're separate enterprise funds, and so the way those funds work is we can't take excess revenue from the water side and funnel it to the sewer. Those have to remain independent. You're correct, Commissioner Jones. Our margins here are tighter. We don't see that relief later on here. And so when you look at these margins, we're not taking a lot of excess revenue and putting it back into our capital funds. But our capital funds on the sewer side we have more reserve
You have a
funds
healthier
on the sewer
reserve
side.
there.
On
so
the sewer side right now.
on the sewer side,
We do
so-
have several capital projects that we need to get done over the next 5 years, but none of those projects have the deadlines that we have on the water side. So, we have a little more flexibility on the sewer side. There's like I say, there's definitely some projects we want to get done in the next 5 years. And we've got some ongoing projects that we're spending some money. But we feel like this is okay for now, but I do think, when we come back, we may come back in 2025, 26 and ask for a change depending upon how some of these projects that we have planned roll out. But right now, we feel comfortable with this. But we're monitoring that. Okay. So that essentially is our user rates. What we're also asking the board to do is we're asking the board to make changes in our other rate structures, which includes our sewer connection fees and our water tap fees. And then also, our miscellaneous appurtenances where we have meter set fees, the cost for purchasing meters, the cost that we provide for inspections, we're asking for increases in those. Our water tap, probably the two biggest increases are the two on the top of the list here. It's the water tap fees, and this is the fees that we charge for construction of new homes, for service for new homes. So on a water side, we're recommending that we increase from $4,000 per home per ERU to $5,000 per ERU on the water side. And then on the sewer side, we're recommending that we go from $4,800 each new home to $5,500 to each new home. And recognizing that, the market is kind of tight as far as construction, new home construction goes. It's just we have not increased these rates, these tap-in fee rates, probably since 2007, I think it was the last increase. It's just we're trying to raise some additional revenue that goes into our capital projects. Because, again, we have a long list of capital projects, and I can go through those, but I've not, I have slides, but I don't think we want to do that. But we have a long list of capital projects that we're trying to raise money for. And a lot of these are associated with the expansion of our system, the enlargement, additional capacity of our treatment plants. And so we're trying to raise some of that money through additional tap fees without trying to reduce, unhinge construction. So we're not trying to dampen construction, but we feel like we need to raise more money from those new homes.
And those haven't been raised since 2007?
I think, I tried to look, and I think it was 2007 is the last increase. It may have been shortly after I started here.
Yeah, I don't remember doing it since then, so.
Yeah.
And so, the additional income revenue that you anticipate from this, is that factored into your bar chart where you're showing the operating margins?
No, not the bar, that doesn't go into our operation. This goes straight into our capital fund.
So
it
this
goes
is
into
completely separate,
different fund, yeah. So it goes into our reserve.
and so
funds.
the revenue is, do you anticipate an increase in revenue to capital
Yes.
from this, and what is that?
Roughly, we have, how many homes a year is it? Are we right now around 400 homes?
We're
a year?
around 350 to 375.
So on the water side, if it was 350 homes, it'd be $350,000 a year for new homes. But then that doesn't include like maybe multifamily. Multifamily, you would have some more associated with multifamily. So it potentially could, on the water side, it could increase maybe somewhere between $300,000 to $450,000, $500,000 a year. Does that sound?
Yep.
Okay. So that's where we're heading. That's what we're asking the board to adopt, to consider. That's why we're having the public hearing today. We did have an opportunity to sit down and talk with the Home Builders Association, both the Dayton HBA and the Cincinnati area home builders, which were very constructive conversations that we had. That was 2 weeks ago. So we've tried to do some outreach to them to let them know that these are the rates that we're increasing. So you may hear some comments today from the HBA.
Very good.
Any other questions?
Not at this time. It's a public hearing. Anybody else want to testify on this matter? Yes, sir.
Morning. My name's Tim Burgoyne. I'm Director of Site Acquisition Development for Silverman & Company, Howe Homes. And I also serve on the Board of Directors for the Ohio Valley Development Council, past president. And we're the development arm of the Greater Cincinnati Home Builders Association. So I'm speaking on behalf of both of those today. We understand costs go up and rates go up, and trust me, in the construction industry, we're familiar with things costing more money and you have to pay more money for things. So I have something fairly specific that I want to speak on, and that is it has to do with the adjustment in the water tap and sewer connection fees that he spoke about. And
Chris, can you put that slide up, please? Thank you.
when we see this increase in fees, or at least when I look at this, they're saying $1,000 increase in water tap fees. Well, we don't build one unit, we build multiple units and, residential units and commercial units. And so, as an example, we have a development that's about 245 residential units. You're looking at an increase here of about $245,000 in fees for that development. The current fee is about $980,000 that we pay to be able to connect to the system. This doesn't put any pipe in the ground or do any construction. It's a check that we hand that gives us permission to connect to the system. And we learned about this. We're in development. There's other people too. That's why I'm speaking collectively. You go to the sewer side. I think that increase, did a quick calculation on that. That increase is, we go from, our current fee is $1,176,000. It's gonna go to $1,347,000. That's $178,500 increase in fees. And when we put these projects together, we put together budgets and plans, and fees are part of that expected thing to do. And then I found out about this 2 weeks ago, that all of a sudden we've got potentially on a project hundreds of thousands of dollars in more fees. It's kind of like getting hit in the back of the head with a 2x4. You don't see it coming. And so we understand that there's increases and things that happen that cost more money. But my request specifically is when we look at these increases, that anyone with an approved preliminary plan, and an approved preliminary plan is a time when you put all your costs and your fees together and you have an expectation. Like on this project I'm talking about, we're paying over $2 million. It's not like we're getting by for free here, but to have another $500,000 thrown at you unexpectedly, where no budget, no plan, no reason to anticipate that is pretty, it's a big number. And these are really big numbers. Plus, if you go down the page, all these other fees are increasing too per unit. So what my request is when you consider this, and I think you are gonna pass some form of this, that you could grandfather in any development that has an approved preliminary plan, because that's the time when we put our costs and our budgets together, and that's the time when we can anticipate what these fees are to be. And like for the water, that's a 25% increase. And when you're talking about big numbers, 25% is a really big number. And so we're asking for consideration for that as you move forward in this. And like I said, we understand things cost more money and we expect to pay more for things. But this was, we've just, we've moved dirt. We haven't paid most of these fees on some of these projects. And all of a sudden, what? We've got potentially $400,000 nobody told us about. That we could be, over the next year and a half or 2 years, that we'd be required to pay. So that's all I have this morning, and I think that that's our request, that's my request, from looking through this. If you could give that consideration moving forward, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Anyone else want to speak on it? Yes, sir.
Morning, Commissioners. My name is Brian Scheck. I'm an associate with Bear Becker and also serve as the current president of the Ohio Valley Development Council. Similar but different correspondence here with the tap fees. As Tim had mentioned, we understand that there is rate increases year to year, and we're not here to defend the rate increase itself. Just a consideration to potential alternate on how these rate increases occur. So currently, as proposed, there is an on average approximate 5% increase in the the user costs. And that's for the current users and any future users. And the rate increase proposed for what was shown up on the screen prior for the tap fees is on average about a 23% increase. And those increases are for every residential unit, so it includes the water tab, the sewer connection, meter setting, inspection, et cetera. And as Tim had mentioned, that can be a large increase just on a project itself. So 23% per unit can be a large number at the end. So as proposed, these rates put a lot of burden on the new users coming into the county, and we would just ask your consideration to take a step back and understand what these rate increases are paying for. As proposed in this, the slides, it indicated that these rates are going to be covering some chemical expense increases, some capital projects, the built assets, main break restorations, and overall utility costs due to inflation. And so that is a overall county benefit, not just new users benefit. So as discussed, we understand that there's rate increases that are required within the county. But with over 90,000 households within the county, we feel that the new users' burden is much larger than the county-wide burden. And with the benefit of the services provided, it being a county-wide benefit, we would ask your consideration to alter some of these rate increases from the front end to more of the billing cycle end. And so just looking at the deficit that was displayed today, you're looking at roughly $2 million, give or take. And if you take that amongst the 90,000 households in the county, that comes down to $22 a year per household. So not a huge increase or a burden from the entire county's perspective. And if you bring that down even more, it's roughly $1.85 a month. So being able to take a step back and think of more county-wide versus the new users coming in, we feel that it would be beneficial to consider altering these tap fees to not just the front-end tap fee perspective, but more so from the water rate and usage perspective.
Appreciate your comments, but the counter argument to what you just said is essentially we've had for a long time a philosophical approach to this, that new growth pays its own way, and in practical consideration, you haven't seen an increase in 17 years.
Understood.
So a 20-ish% increase amortized over that period would be very common. You're just seeing it at once. I think the first speaker's comments are worth consideration, but to say, oh, there's 90,000 residents, let's just put it all on them, they're already here, it's not that big of a deal, versus, wait a second, a lot of our problems are tied to oversizing of the lines, that we've got new users, it wasn't necessarily designed for this many, and you have 240 new units coming in. Things like that are clearly an issue for the system, and I believe that you guys have done very well in Warren County the last 20 years, and it's a very desirable place to build, and the market says that it's very much in line with the rates. We're not seeing this affect anything, and I don't know if you're familiar, I just read something on a case in California where there was this user fee, and we try to be the polar opposite of everything California does. They were putting like a $65,000 fee for someone to, Chris, did you see that? That it was like some tap fee that they were trying to stop this one person from building a manufactured home, and the county didn't want them to build it, and it was a $65,000 fee for like a 1,500 square foot manufactured home. So that's actually going before, I think, even the Supreme Court, that it's so out of whack with reality. But our fees are not necessarily out of whack. I mean, they're very, on the user side, we're one of the lowest in Southwest Ohio on the operation side. And on the tap side, this still puts us, what, Chris, in the middle somewhere? Or are we on the user tap-in fees?
I think, you know, we're comparable to our neighboring counties. Thanks. We're comparable to, I think, Butler County. There are obviously other places that are trying to pull in developments, so those tap-in fees are very low. So those communities that are trying to draw in new homes, new developments, they reduce their tap-in fees to try to attract that.
Right, government's trying to incentivize people to build there. We don't have that problem. We're very blessed that we don't have that problem.
Right, but we're comparable probably to Butler County, to Greene County, I'd have to check Paramount County. Greene County's at, I'm sorry, you know, Michael just handed me a summary sheet. Greene County is $5,000 on water fee. Butler County's at $4,465. Mason is this right? $9,233. Southwest Regional Water District is $5,950. So there's communities around us that are pretty similar.
Fair enough. Well, we appreciate your comments. We appreciate the home builders, you know, trying to do business here. It's that balance that we're trying to achieve.
And we understand that, and it's just you know, going from one year to another, the large impact on a single rate increase as opposed to, you know, what you're seeing in a year-to-year slight increase.
Yeah, but
seems a little
I
bit-
think here's the issue that you're choosing not to take into consideration, is that ratepayers have already paid for the infrastructure that you're going to be utilizing. And when you tap in to increase the demand on the existing infrastructure, we have to invest more resources in capital to be able to prepare for that. And so while I understand socializing the costs across all ratepayers, you know, those many of our ratepayers in the northern part of the county have been subsidizing the rates for consumers who have to get their water from Cincinnati Water Works. There's a place for that. But in this instance, when we have so much new capital that has to go into improving the infrastructure as a direct result of new projects coming online, it's simply unfair to make all ratepayers pay for that. The new residents that would be coming in would benefit from the socialized rates that they'll be getting through their water and sewer service. So I'm not terribly sympathetic to the percentage with respect to fees and our rate structure, because I think that's apples and oranges. I am, however, sympathetic to the issue that was raised around projects that are already in the pipeline and have already been budgeted for. How do you reconcile as we're phasing into a new rate structure? I think that seems to me something that's worth considering, but I just don't see how the increased costs, capital costs, as a direct result of this new development should be socialized to all ratepayers.
I guess a question I would ask is, you'd mentioned the capital projects are due to the new users coming online. Is that, maybe it's a question to Chris.
We have a
but is
lot
that-
of those capital projects
Is
in
that-
certain parts of the county that absolutely we are investing in, so that we can serve our customers. We have you know, sewer plants that are at capacity that every time we get new tap in, you know, is threatening the system. I'm sure Chris could provide you with an entire list of that he presents that to us on a regular basis, but it's tens of millions of dollars on the books.
Yes, in addition to that, we've expanded treatment plants and taken debt service on that. So a lot of the debt service we're paying is being paid from those new tap fees. So we have new projects that are on the books, but also debt service we're paying on existing projects that expanded treatment plants.
So then, I guess my next question then would be, how are those capital projects funded if there are no new users?
It becomes a problem. And we did that before your time, 20 years ago, when I first took office. We were out of capacity. So we expanded the Lower Little Miami treatment plant for the entire southern part of the county. That's where all the sewage went. And it was literally, we took on debt, and that was paid for by the tap-in fees. And then when 2008, 9, 10 happened, that was not fun, because we did that, and all of a sudden the revenue wasn't there. So we don't want to be in that position, and that was a direct correlation to the new users. And again, I agree with Commissioner Jones that, you know, it's a reasonable argument that we've already done our pro formas, we've looked at our numbers, and now you're hitting us with a fee that's, you know, already affecting an existing project. That's something we should consider. But to say, you know, new users, let's just cut them even a break, even though they haven't seen an increase in 17 years, doesn't carry a lot of weight with me. And let's put that on all the current users. They're going to go up. I mean, I'm just,
Right.
you know, we're
I
pretty
understand.
straight with you guys. They're going to go up. It's just how we do it is a reasonable request.
But the fees don't cover the cost of the infrastructure. I see where you're going is without new users on the system, then how are you covering the infrastructure? But the reality is that new infrastructure to some degree is being subsidized by all ratepayers. Because even if we get another $1 million on it's less than that, it doesn't come close to what the capital expenses are in a given year. And so through the rate, as we've heard Chris say, the delta that we hope to, you know, once again be able to get between costs and revenues to go back into capital. I mean, if the tap fees actually covered the cost of the infrastructure, then the point is well taken. It's just a balancing act. And so we're just we want to have proper development here, and we're not using our rates as a way to keep development out, but we are trying to find a place that balances the interests between those who've been here and the new development that's coming on board without being so onerous to tip the scale. So I don't know what that is. I hear you in terms of the percentage seems off the mark to you. Fair enough. But it's not because we're trying to keep the development out. In fact, I think there's a view that we think people will still develop at the same rate here, regardless of what this fee is, because of a whole lot of other reasons. And the market will address that. And so that's why I think I'm more open to the idea that there is, the market sort of already told those who have projects in place what those costs were, and to come in afterwards might be something we should remedy. But I understand your point. I totally get it. I respect where you're coming from. But in trying to balance the interests and looking at the substantial amount of capital projects that we have to do, I just don't see, it's just not terribly compelling.
Understood. So final comment, just to consider not such a large increase in the tap fee. So understood that there will be increase. That's how life goes. There's inflation, there's cost increases, but to have you all consider not such a large 23% increase over the course of a single year.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to speak on this matter briefly? I would recommend that we have another public hearing on this matter, let staff consider this, to continue this. I'll let the public know, I mean, it was interesting, Chris, when you said we use the American Rescue Act, correct?
Yeah, the ARPA money.
The ARPA money, that seems great, oh, look how wonderful this is, but there is a direct correlation with the amount of money that was spent from Washington DC that went out, that literally poured kerosene on the inflationary fires. And this is the stuff we see, when too much money was sent on top of already pent up demand, this is what we're seeing, is this out of control inflation, and now we all are paying the price for it. So please consider, I think you're hearing the board say that that's a reasonable request on, do we phase it in? Do we consider, you know, things that are already going, that the budgets are already met, they're already set? Is that a valid, we'd like to hear a response from you, and we don't need necessarily to hear it right now, but we want to consider that and, you know, come back of when was this informed, they should have known, you know, all of those types of
Absolutely,
things.
we can certainly reach out to.
So I would entertain a motion to continue this public hearing.
I would move to continue the public hearing until, do you have a date?
We could do February 13th, February 27th.
27th, probably.
February 27th?
Very good.
Is
Thank
that
you so
right?
much. That sounds great.
9 o'clock.
9 o'clock?
Awesome. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you for your time.
Very good.
you.
Next, I'm surprised, so everybody here didn't want to speak on sewer stuff. I'm kind of shocked. Well, next we have a public hearing on the rezoning application of Blue Rock Properties LLC to rezone approximately 30 acres in Union Township from mixed-use neighborhood, mixed-use MXUN, to light industrial manufacturing zone I-1 and general manufacturing district I-2 with a planned unit development overlay. Michelle, good morning.
Good morning, Michelle Tagmeyer, Warren County Building and Zoning. We'll start off with our
And Bruce, we're not swearing people in for this?
Thank you so much. This is case number 2023-09. It is Tyler Holden, Blue Rock Properties LLC. Mr. Holden is here, of course. Township is Union. The address is 2300 Lebanon Road. Parcel ID is 13330000110. The property size is 30 acres and there's 150 feet of road frontage. The current zoning district is mixed-use neighborhood, and the future land use map has this as low-density residential. The existing land use is residential. The requested zoning is I-1, light industrial manufacturing, I-2, general industrial manufacturing, with a planned unit development. So the issue for consideration is to rezone the property from mixed use to an I-1, I-2 PUD for a new industrial incubator development. I'm sure that brings a lot of questions in itself because it is a new idea. Mr. Holden has his own PowerPoint. We'll go into detail as far as those kinds of uses and what his plans are. The rezoning process starts with Regional Planning Commission. Their meeting was on November 16th. That recommendation then goes to the Warren County Rural Zoning Commission. Their meeting was on December 6th, and I have both of those recommendations later in the PowerPoint. Of course, it is before you for final approval, or however you decide. The site aerial, here is the subject. I'll give you the next, I think this picture does a little bit better. Of course, you do have Aris Springs, Bethesda to the south, and to the north would be Home Depot. The provided concept plan. They're proposing 10 lots. 6 of those are I-1. Those I-1 lots are the closest to the residential. The I-2 lots are the 4 in the back. Those are more intense uses. Utilities, as you can see, there is a 90-foot electric distribution that does touch lots 4, 7, 8, and 10. The proposed PUD standards, and these are the allowable uses, includes highway, street, and bridge construction companies, industrial manufacturing, research supply, service group, subgroup manufacturing, and some of those would include small-scale material manufacturing, cosmetics manufacturer, light manufacturing, sheet metal machine shops. The prohibited uses include things such as slaughterhouse and stockyards, truck stops, motor vehicle impound lots, asphalt or concrete batch plant or products manufacturing. A notification map of everyone that was notified within 500 feet. The zoning and flood map with the neighboring properties, and also this one. This is the Warren County Future Land Use Map. This map was produced in 2018. It does show the property as low-density residential. This is the City of Lebanon Future Land Use Map. This, of course, was done a year later, 2019. It does show this as Innovation District, which is light industrial, warehousing, distribution, commercial, retail, and office.
But this is not in the city, correct?
No, it is not.
Is it contiguous to the city boundaries?
It is. They have the bike park to the north. Next up is the Warren County Regional Planning Commission, and they have the other recommendations. I'll turn it over to Cameron.
Good morning.
Hi, Cameron.
Cameron Goshinsky with RPC, and I am here this morning to present the Regional Planning Commission recommendations as well as the Rural Zoning Commission recommendations. The staff recommends approval of the Blue Rock Properties PUD Stage 1 to the Warren County Rural Zoning Commission subject to the following 8 conditions. 1, all plans and proposals of the applicant shall be made conditions of approval unless modified by one of the following conditions. 2, compliance with the Warren County Rural Zoning Code, which is in effect at the time of issuance of a zoning permit, provided that the base zoning district standards do not conflict with the PUD standards. 3, at PUD Stage 2, the applicant submits a detailed site plan illustrating buffer, fencing, parking, lighting, signage, and landscaping. 4, prior to PUD Stage 2 approval, stormwater management shall be reviewed and approved by the Warren County Engineers Office. 5, the applicant shall identify a maximum number of principal uses to be permitted on a single lot. 6, the applicant shall submit updated PUD standards to address building height. That's currently 60 feet in height and currently permitted within the I-1 and I-2 zoning districts, in particular for lots adjacent to residential uses. 7, buildings shall be designed and oriented to reduce negative externalities such as noise, lighting, building height, and visual impact. 2, neighboring residential uses, bay doors, loading areas, and entrances should be oriented towards internal streets as approved by the zoning inspector. And 8, the applicant submits an updated site plan that illustrates a 25-foot buffer along the western property line adjacent to residential properties. The site plan currently illustrates a 10-foot buffer. So that was RPC staff recommendation. The RPC Executive Committee, they recommended denial on the November 15th RPC Executive Committee meeting, and that was a vote of 10 yes, 5 no, and 1 abstain. And the Rural Zoning Commission, Mr. Gibbs made a motion to recommend approval to the Board of County Commissioners. Looking at that review criteria, 1.304.5, sections or items A, C, F, and I were used in that determination. That was a unanimous vote to approve, and that was with all of RPC staff recommendations.
So let me get it straight. So it's staff, and I didn't know staff always, I guess staff comments on these things. Staff recommended approval. The executive committee of the RPC
Recommended
denial.
Correct.
And rural zoning recommended approval?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
And then we have 2 additional slides for you, just showing you the proposed site development changes. So when you're looking at the gray on the right, that's the current zoning within the mixed-use neighborhood. Looking at setbacks, buffers, impervious surface ratio, possible residential lots, and that's if there is centralized sewer, as well as a minimum lot size and currently permitted uses, which is residential. And then if you look at the left, that's the proposed zoning. What's labeled is the PUD standards, what's included in those standards, and what's highlighted in the lighter blue, that's what the current straight zone I-1 and I-2 is. So if it wasn't a PUD, what's in the highlighted blue is what would be the actual zoning standards. And then one additional slide, just identifying what is being proposed. You can see on the left what is varying, setbacks, buffers, and access on what is being proposed. There's some prohibited industrial uses, removing the potential for 85 single-family homes, buffering to residential districts, and then the building access and function-oriented away from residential uses. And here is that decision-making criteria. Do you have any questions for me or for Michelle?
So current mixed use, when it says low density housing, correct?
Correct.
But that's not necessarily mixed use. Mixed use, the actual, so even though the land use says low density housing, the actual current zoning with this mixed use residential neighborhood, you can allow up to 85 homes and or 89 two-family and apartments?
That would be or, yes. For a mixed-use neighborhood, that's 4 units per acre, which obviously is not match the low-density residential, and that would have to go before the RPC committee for a preliminary plan approval, or if it was within a PUD, would have to come before back to the county, to this board.
And that is current zoning that theoretically,
Correct.
they could put upwards of 85 homes or 89 apartments or multifamily.
Under current zoning, correct.
Okay?
Can you show the criteria, please? Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Guess at this time I'd like to hear from the applicant.
I have a slideshow. Can I just play it?
If you put the USB in.
Pretty much a slideshow and some extra information.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm sorry. All right, I'm Tyler Holden, one of the property owners at 2300 Lebanon Road.
Could you speak up, Tyler?
Yeah.
There's,
It's
It's wired.
wireless.
But
Yeah,
it's,
I'll speak up. Again, Tyler Holden, one of the two owners of Blue Rock Properties and KT Holden Construction. The other owner is my wife, Kate. Get into introducing myself. I think it's very important that everybody understands why I'm standing here and a little background. Kate started the company in 2013 on paper, then expanded in 2018. In 2020, I joined her to start our construction division. At that time, we had 3 employees, a truck driver, my wife and I. Fast forward to now, we have just under 50 employees, and we focus on heavy civil public infrastructure. I grew up in Lebanon, graduated from Lebanon High School. I've always lived in Warren County, currently live in Wayne Township. My 4 kids are involved, my oldest is involved in 4-H for the first time this year. Our company is a premier sponsor of the Warren County Fair 2023 last year, and we renewed that for this year. We stay involved in the community, and we want our business to be here, and we want to be here. A little history of KT Holden Construction. As I mentioned, Kate started it. We're a woman-owned business. We're certified with ODOT as a disadvantaged business. We're a federal woman-owned business.
And we're also a certified Ohio Edge contractor. We are one of only 2 regular public infrastructure companies that bid in Warren County that have an office in Warren County. So the other one is Barrett. So we are a local heavy civil infrastructure company. We currently have a contract with Warren County Water and Sewer to replace the transmission main up Socialville transmission main. We're the only contractor that's located in Warren County that bid that project.
As we grew from 2020 to today, from 3 to 50 employees, it was very, very hard to find a location in Warren County. We were renting a small office, and then we were working out of my house in a little gravel yard in the beginning, and then we rented a property down the street from us. And as we grew,
We were fortunate enough to rent a place that was able to house our equipment and yard and a building to give us a stepping stone to try to find and buy a piece of property for our business. So 2022, we rented a space that is similar to what we're proposing. We looked for 2 years. We looked at lots in the city of Lebanon and all around Warren County. I came into the zoning office and talked about our zoning that we needed for our business, talked about available property, and try to make something work financially with the requirements we needed. The financial part was the hardest part. There are industrial parcels available, but it makes it very tough for a small business that's starting, and with the capital needed and the financing needed, it makes it a very tough feat nowadays. So we were fortunate enough to buy the property that we're on now. Before we bought the property, I went to the township and I went to the zoning and talked about our use. And within the mixed use zoning that it currently has, I've been told we're fine on that end of things. We're allowed to operate what we operate there, which is a office and storage. It's a commercial business, essentially. So the small business incubator idea came from Kate and I, thinking about the need that we saw, the immediate need that we saw in this area. We could stretch out to areas in urban, like Cincinnati or Columbus, and find similar areas that we could operate a business out of. And with us living in Warren County, we wanted to find something here. So we've got 30 acres, and we wanted to make the most of the property. So we looked at the surrounding zoning. We looked at the physical restrictions of the property with the utility easement and the location of the highway. What can we do with this? And when we took a step back and actually looked at it, and we just went through the process, there's immediate need for small, light industrial, small business, friendly property in the area. So we're trying to fulfill that need. Our focus is the businesses that are coming out of their garage, the businesses that maybe are currently somewhere but have a property restriction where they can't expand, but they're all focused on small businesses. We are going to retain ownership of the property, and the model is to lease these properties to the businesses in their first 3 to 5 years. We are well connected because of our current situation with the small business and disadvantaged business departments within the state and the county and city of Cincinnati and Columbus and the federal government. So we had mentors as we grew quickly in our process. We had mentors that helped us out And that's what Kate and I really would like to do is mentor these proposed businesses as well. The idea, we spoke with Warren County Economic Development Office, and the idea, I guess, has been floated, and it's been talked about because there's a need. But it couldn't be decided on who was going to pay for it, how that was going to look if you got different cities involved within the county, and you got expenses up front to get the development going. How is that shared and what that looked like? I think what the great thing about this is we're asking for 9 additional lots. Is it something that we can try on our, we can try to help all of the, we don't have any favorites. So if we bring in a small guy working out of his garage in Lebanon and he wants to start here, he can go to Lebanon's industrial park. If we bring in somebody that's in Springboro, he can come here, get his momentum, get a stepping stone, and then go to Springboro's industrial park. There are obviously industrial parks that will accommodate growing businesses, but they need that stepping stone financially, so they're not locked into a $5 million loan and financing to get a property like this started. This is a great location. We've already experienced it with us being there. We can be in Delhi in 45 minutes, and I thought Delhi in itself took 45 minutes to get to once you're in Cincinnati. But we service all of greater Cincinnati with our business and Northern Kentucky. And we also go to the south side of Columbus. And we can serve a very large area being this close to the interstate. So you don't find that a whole lot with small business opportunities. The cheaper properties aren't really located close to the interstate with access like this. This is within a mile. So that's an advantage that we can give these small businesses to help them out. It was a big thing for us so far. It's been realized, and it is good. So I want to go in a little more detail about the existing property because it was things that Kate and I looked at when we proposed this idea.
When did you buy the property?
November of 2022 is when we closed.
Okay.
Pretty recent. So there are 2 separately owned industrial parcels that adjoin the property currently. We have a recorded easement on our property, the proposed property, to service one of the I-2 parcels. The other I-2 parcel was one that you voted on last week as a similar PUD to change setbacks so he could expand his business. It still maintains the I-2 label with some restrictions that are very similar to our proposal. The other industrial property has no restrictions, and we do have to service that easement to that property.
But you acknowledge that the subject property you just referenced that we discussed last week predated any zoning. That was here long before our zoning code. So that's it's not exactly apples to apples, is it?
I would say that it did predate, but the proposed use is a similar proposed use of what we're proposing. And I would also say that last week, in my mind, you restarted the clock by agreeing to change it to a PUD with different standards and restrictions on that property. That didn't exist in the 1950s. That existed as of last week. So that was an opportunity to keep it in its grandfathered state or adjust the standards that are in the zoning today. I mean, and on top of that, I still have to maintain a I-2 easement or an easement to an I-2 property, which even as we speak today, tractor trailers with steel goes through there and actually serves both the properties. But the technical easement is going to the I-2 property that wasn't a part of that PUD. So there are 2 separate owners, 2 separate properties. This is also under an interstate overlay district. I pulled this from a county document that is a floating zone applied to areas of the county appropriate for employment centers, industrial, and commercial development. I've got a map that I provided you guys in the back of the slideshow that shows interstate overlay districts, and typically it would be in the slideshow printout. with all the pages. Typically, that interstate overlay district is in areas such as the casino and all the warehousing that's out by Monroe, the Walmart and Amazon and Home Depot facilities that are out by Monroe, the JED district at 123 and 71. So these are industrial, commercial-based areas. And I asked the question to the zoning department, and I said, you know, why do these areas get this? And would it be acceptable to say because they anticipate change and this is like anticipating that this area could change from its base zoning? And the answer was yes. That's why they have these overlays. As I mentioned before, we're 1 mile from 71 and State Route 46 or 48. Currently, that interchange is being designed and for an increased capacity. That job will be out in the next couple years to increase the capacity of that interchange. Also, in your information that I gave you is a letter from ODOT. I'll talk about that later. That's in support of this development from a right-of-way stance and from a small business incubator and disadvantaged business incubator stance. So that'll be in the packet of 3, I believe. This property is adjacent to Lebanon's abandoned sanitary landfill. It will always be a sanitary landfill. The current use is a bike park. And then they also have to the north office parcels and commercial, proposed office and commercial. There's a 180 feet wide power line easement that cuts across diagonal. And I want to specifically say that it does provide a natural buffer in itself between those proposed office and commercial parcels of the city of Lebanon. Whether it's on their side of the fence or ours, it does provide a buffer. We can't build a building underneath that. We can do grading and have a lot and have a road and yard, but we cannot have a building. So from a building standpoint, it provides a pretty large buffer, which we take in consideration with our layout. Also, the point is this is pretty low visibility from State Route 48. I know the word industrial can be scary, but the intent is the small business incubator, and the intent is to have options for small industrial facilities. But with that being said, we've isolated the I-2, which has a couple more uses and lot size restrictions to the rear of the property, which is you can't see from 48. I actually stood at the bike park and taken a picture through the trees today when there's no leaves, and you can't even see our current buildings through that woods. So it is very low visibility. And then there's the 5 residential properties out front that border this property. I've spoken with 2 of the 5. I believe 1 came out in full support of this development. The other one I've spoken to hasn't come out against it, but hasn't come out for it. They're just listening, and I haven't been able to speak to the other 3. You see in the layout of the visual, though, I think it's about 300 feet across State Route 48 is the Lebanon's Industrial Park. So looking at the overall map, I don't think this is a spot zone. I don't think this is a unique situation, and I'll go over that in a minute, too.
So you're saying there's the 5 subject residential right there along 48, and where in your map it says City of Lebanon proposed professional office, is that residential there at all?
No, it's vacant lot.
And then City of Lebanon ex-sanitary landfill, is there any residential there?
No, it's vacant, other than the use right now in the top right-hand corner is the bike park over top the actual landfill portion of that.
Okay.
So here's our proposed details. I just wanted to go over, I know Michelle presented this, I just want to go over a little more detail with you guys. The variance that we're asking for is just to make the most of the land. Warren County nor anybody is reproducing land nowadays. And so our setbacks match the PUD from Royce Machine and him expanding and wanting to put up another building. But it's also to maximize the space that we have and still try to keep in with the zoning code and try to have some compromise there. Again, we intentionally put the I-2 based zoning in the rear, and then put the I-1 buffer as a buffer with that residential to step that down. At this point, there are, I'll bring it up now, we have 4 interested businesses, and we only have 9 lots. I think 3 of those 4 would be interested in the 1 acre I-1 lots, and the one interested business we're looking at the rear lot back by the existing pond and creek. That's not gonna change with this development. That would probably, the pond may get increased depending on whatever Warren County Soil and Water says for the detention area, but. So the 4 proposed, businesses that I have now, and we haven't advertised this at all, this has just been throughout this process. One was brought up by the Warren County Small Business, Development Office as a test kitchen and lab for different, types of cooking and cooking facilities. I guess they need an industrial space. A simple building with a shared industrial space in that building. The second is a corrosion and paint coatings company where they do store their product, but they also do some mixing. And right now he's operating out of multiple storage units at multiple locations, and he wants to branch out and grow and have his own lot rather than have multiple storage units. That company works at places like Miami Fort Power Plant and Cargill and those type of places, but this was a good spot for him to go to lease. The third business, I got a call one day, and it's a very interesting concept. They need a 10,000 square foot building to produce their product. They've got equipment coming in from Norway, I believe it is, and they have looked in the entire tri-state area. And when he called me, so he heard about the development, his exact words on the phone were, I've been looking for this for the past year and a half, a very similar story to mine. And he goes, this is a savior for my business. He goes, I'm trying to get out of my garage right now. And I've got investors, serious ones, and he told me a few. And then he goes, but they need to see my business working in reality, not just in my garage. His product is, without going into detail, his product is it's actually a carbon credit that's produced. And then when it's used, it creates a carbon credit. And I thought that was pretty interesting. But he's a simple, I need a building, and that's what I need. The last one is a proposed small batch distillery. They've been very confidential with things because of the market and what they're producing, but that's why they like the rear lot to do their thing. I see potential with them. This isn't a storefront, so I see potential with them staying here on their production side and then moving into a storefront like the city of Lebanon, Mason, somewhere that would accommodate a storefront, much like you see in other areas. I thought that was a great idea. They also want to do some import stuff too, so they need a warehouse and that sort of thing. Small batch defined, I asked what that meant, and it was 80,000 gallons annually, which is, when you look up definitions, that's pretty small. So those are the 4 interested clients right now that I think fit the bill perfectly. That's what we're looking for.
But you understand, I mean, and again, congratulations on the success of your business. I mean, that's, you know, the American success story. That's exactly what we're looking for inside of Warren County. But I have a feeling from your neighbor's standpoint, it's one thing to say, hey, I've got some low-intensity office buildings that are back behind here, that people are 9-to-5 type of jobs. There's office workers. It's a small business incubator. People are coming, kicking around ideas. My church has one of those in Mason. I mean, it's not uncommon to do that type of things. But when you hear industrial, just because you're saying these are the interested parties right now, once that zoning's in place, that doesn't mean 5 years from now or 6 months from now, that's actually the user that's going to be there. And at least if I were in their shoes, the freak out factor is I've got a potential industrial use. I've got a metal stamping facility that's going to bang sheet metal all day, every day. That's That would
Yeah.
be concerning to me. And so even though you seem very reasonable in what your vision is and what potentially your current utilization is, once this zoning goes on, you could flip this property and then a whole new, no matter, oh, I'm gonna own it for however, we've heard that before. You can flip this and the new owner, out of town or whatever, could care less what goes in that site if someone pays them for it and they've got full industrial utilization. I mean, do you recognize that issue?
Well, they don't have full industrial utilization. We have prohibited uses. And secondly, Royce Machine can do the same thing. Dr. Singh can do, or Royce Machine and those two I-2 properties can do the same thing.
But again, that's already there.
You're
And
exactly
that's-
right.
That, that's grandfather. So, and I would argue if the residents came, and we've had this before, where residents have come in and argued, oh, I hate my neighbor, I did this, you know, they were doing this, or there's an airport there, or what have you. It was there before you. You bought your property
I
after
agree
you
with
knew
you,
your neighbor.
actually. I agree. To my point is, I still have to maintain an easement to an I-2 property. I have I-2 neighbors. There's nothing that's going to happen with that sanitary landfill other than a bike park in our lifetime. So this is an area, and with the power line easement, it doesn't become an attractive property for residential either. So what do you do with the property? You know, you've got I-2 neighbors. I'm not going to put in a homerama there. You've got power lines that not everybody wants to live by, and you got property to the north that'll never be developed. So what do you do with the property? Well, when you're a mile from an interstate interchange and you can actually promote small business growth, that became the reason why we pursued this. Now, what I'll do in my next slide is here's examples where this exists already. This isn't a stretch for Union Township. It's not a stretch for Warren County at all. The first is it exists as my neighbor, those two I-2 properties, so I won't elaborate on those. The second is 3178 Bunnell Road. You'll see number 2 on the sheet there. Those are all residential properties in front of those massive I-1, I-2 non-prohibited areas zoned, and that is in Union Township. The number 3 is at 42, at 296442. These are I-1 and I-2 uses near residential developments. Number 4 is actually Heritage Hill Drive. That was the homerama just recently. One of those lots is 220 feet from Quantum Metals in Lebanon's industrial park that, like you said, dumps metal 5 times a day. We worked over there, and it's very loud. That development came in after, and Lebanon provided water utilities, I believe, to that homerama development next to industrial. Number 5 is 3464 Turtle Creek Union Road. That's out with the JED. That also has an interstate highway overlay, and that came along after the fact next to residential development. I'm sorry. 5 is Turtle Creek Road. I was reading the wrong one. That's Union Township again, surrounded by residential development. 6 is the Phillips and Jack Road. That's the highway. That's the JED at 123 with the highway overlay. That was brought on after the fact with residential around it. Putting this together, I found 2 interesting facts: that all the current industrial property not in the city border residential developments currently. Every one of those. And that, if you look at this area, that's all the industrial that's not in a city. The second is all of these are included in Lebanon's future land use map in their proposed city limits. Now, I know that's a proposal. I know that's speculative. But it's interesting that every single one of these, except for one, are located in Union Township, but every single one of these are included in their future map. I provided the full map as one of the attachments to your thing there, but it encompasses even 123 and 71 out there, but also the industrial property at 741 and Bunnell Road. So to your point, I want to briefly cover this, and I'm sure Mr. Brunkel will cover it as well. That as the property owner, I have 2 options right now, and the way I see it. But I'm standing here because I want to work with the county. It's in the Union Township, which is in Warren County. And that's why I'm standing here today. But I do have another option, and it's to annex into Lebanon. And per their plan, it would be this innovation district, which includes light industrial, commercial development. It includes development. So to your point earlier, the ball's in your court, and I believe that for a few reasons. But, because I am standing here wanting to work with the county. But this innovation district that you see below, or on the screen, doesn't just encompass my property. It's much more than that. So there's an opportunity, I think, to choose what this area is going to look like down the road from a 10,000 square foot view, what it's going to look like. I've met with Bronco, we met, and I asked him a simple question. I asked him what it take. The question was about utilities, and it was basically do the development our way. And I'm paraphrasing, but that's kind of how the conversation went, which he's got a point. But it doesn't involve not developing it, and it doesn't involve residential. So we're already in the mixed use. We already have commercial business there. And this whole area, with it being adjacent to the interstate, is progressing. The progression is towards industrial or heavy commercial. So that's where we're at with that. I'm pretty sure.
So what you're saying, just so everybody is perfectly clear, this isn't our first time around the block with this. We see this a lot in high-density residential settings that, it's just so the public understands, the only reason he's talking to us is this is in Union Township. We do the zoning, we handle the zoning for Union Township, even though trustees from Union Township are here, and I'm sure they want to speak on this matter. We don't control what happens inside of city limits. Once it's inside of a city, they are home ruled. They can make their own laws. They can put up apartment buildings. They can put up whatever they want inside of a city. So I don't want to use threat, because that's not what you're doing.
No, I'm
That-
not.
That's
That's
what
not
you're-
what I'm saying at all.
I understand, and you're coming across as very reasonable, but what you're saying, as a free market landowner, you are contiguous, which under Ohio law is a very specific word. You are contiguous to a city, which means at your discretion, you can annex into that city, and we lose any and all control. The city of Lebanon would then have complete control over what happens on this project. So that is honestly a very important factor, simply because if this was in the middle of a township and there was no options to go anywhere else, that situation would not exist, and it's more in our court completely, because the property owner wouldn't have another option. I just want to make sure the public understands that. And that is not an opinion, that's a fact. So, again, I'm not saying you're threatening it, but you're saying.
I appreciate the explanation for sure and the clarity, because that is exactly what I mean. That there is an option there. And right now, you guys have the option to control that, and what that looks like working with the township, Union Township. That you're right. So, are there any other questions?
Not yet.
I'm sure there will be.
I'm sure there will be. Okay. That's all I have for now.
Great. Thank you.
And again, we appreciate your demeanor, we appreciate you trying to work on this. Hopefully, the public recognizes that, and we always like to conduct these in a very civil, everybody's neighbors, everybody, hopefully gets along, and that's the way we like to conduct these meetings.
To that point, the last meeting that I was at for the Rural Zoning Commission, similar showing of concern came to that meeting, and I invited everybody to get a hold of me and talk to me so we could walk through this and just talk about it. I've heard a lot of rumors about what I'm doing that aren't true, because that's not what we're doing. And that's how it happens, but that's why I want to bring clarity to that. The only person that contacted me was one of the 5 residents out front to tell me that she's for it. So,
And you understand when you're actually asking for a PUD overlay, correct?
yes, it's a PUD.
Yeah, and a PUD, that is and Bruce is our counsel, that is a negotiated situation, correct, Bruce? To where then it's not just straight zoning. Under a planned unit development, there is a negotiation back and forth between the authority and the property owner, correct?
That's correct.
Which means that potentially we might want, if we were going to entertain this and we heard concerns, well, but what if blank happens, then that can obviously be a condition of a PUD, and you understand that.
Absolutely. I think we've already, your zoning department has been very good to work with. I'm thoroughly impressed. And I think there's already been that happening in conversations and what we've been talking about, and they've all been productive and constructive on trying to make it happen. Now, that's without the input of what you're going to hear, but at least it's showing that same progress in that department.
Very good. Thank
all
you,
right.
Mr. Holden.
Thank you.
Very good. Next, I'd like to hear from the township. If you would like to speak on this matter, if any of the trustees would have any comment, or if you're here just to observe.
I'll make it brief today.
If you, for the record, if you'd introduce yourself.
Yeah, Chris Cook, President of the Board, Union Township Trustees. So it would be hypocrisy for me to stand here and talk about the development when in 2015 I stood right here and asked for Highlands of Heritage Hill to be allowed to build a subdivision right next to an industrial park. So I really don't feel confident in saying reverse here, and it's really not up to the township. The township did not take any action on this. As a group, we just said we'd like to have a seat at the table, because what typically happens with these is that we find out after the fact that the land is being annexed and that it's being taken. So one of the residents from Kings Acres came to a public meeting and said they felt like they were dealing with the devil and Satan. And I would say my mom's old saying was, you're kind of in a rock and a hard place. And so I understand the dreams, hopes, and aspirations of all the residents of King Acres, and they have sent us numerous emails, pictures of their grandkids riding bikes and all those concerns that they have. And it's been my experience, after chairing the Board of Zoning Appeals for the last decade, that a lot of those things are unfounded. We've had one complaint from Highlands of Heritage Hill, the Homerama site. We've had one complaint, and that was over the Rumpke truck showing up at 4 o'clock in the morning. Had nothing to do with the industrial salvage company that's back there making noise, or the turbine company that builds turbine engines. So a lot of the things are unfounded. We didn't take any action as a board, because I think as a board, we think that we're kind of in a rock and a hard spot. I think you clarified it. Mr. Holden has options. He doesn't have to stay in the township. When we were notified of this and originally took a look at it, and we saw the proposed future land use map from Lebanon, we realized that their intent is to annex all of that land, all the way from Home Depot, all the way down to Kohl's. I mean, that's what they show on their proposed map. So I think our board, the only thing we did as a board, and the only thing I can speak to as a board, is the fact that we said, if this is going to happen, we want to have a seat at the table. I understand all, and I speak to the residents and just say, we understand all of their concerns. I understand that. I sit right here usually just about every week and listen to these kinds of cases where people are concerned about a wedding venue or whatever coming through the BZA. So I get it. I do. And I know that there are things that are valid in their concerns, and then there are other things that I would say they're valid to them, but maybe long-term turn out not to be that way. So we didn't take any action as a board. We just said if there is a process, if this is to be rezoned, if it is to be developed, we don't want to lose the land out of the township, and we'd like to have a seat at the table.
So, Mr. Cook,
Yes.
it's good to see you again, by the way.
Good to see you,
It's been a
Commissioner
long
Jones.
time. I'm curious, like, I hear what you're saying. The township's interested in keeping it in the property in the township and having a seat at the table. So there's a proposal now before us. Is there something that you desire from the township side that's not addressed in the proposal? Because I'm sympathetic to the township's, issues. I would want to know if there's something that the proposal doesn't address that you wish it would. But if you don't tell me what that is, if we're gonna even consider a PUD, now's the time to kind of talk about that. Do you have something in particular that the township is looking to achieve?
I don't. We have just been through this time and time again, where our property has been annexed.
So your primary interest is keeping this parcel of land as part of the township, not being annexed into the city?
I think that, you said it very clearly. I think that it puts us in a rock and a hard spot, because we understand the concerns of all the residents of Kings Acres. We also don't want Mr. Holton to take his parcel and annex into the city of Lebanon and suffer that loss again. And I think he has a very valid point that he can do that, and we can't do anything about it. We already lost the Totterall farm back in 2015. That was another one that they built 400 houses right there on the edge of Mason. It was annexed into Mason, and that backs into Lebanon's industrial park. So as a board, we didn't support or go against Tyler Holden's proposal. That was not what we said as a board. The other two trustees, maybe they have a different opinion and can speak individually. All I can tell you as a board, all we're saying is, we, with everything that we can, we want to keep the land in Union Township. And we are the trustees of all the people, just like you're the commissioners for the county. We are the trustees for Union Township and all the people, not just the people of Kings Acres. Although we're very, very sympathetic, and all three trustees are here this morning. This is important to us. So that's where we are. I wish I could be more clear, and I'm not trying to be vague or even
No,
sit on the fence. I'm
I
just saying,
totally-
it's your ball.
Well,
You're the ones that
you
have
get
to
sit
decide.
and-
Yeah.
You get to sit and watch what I'm sensing from you, so correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm sensing from you on behalf of the township is when you say you're losing things, you keep watching land get annexed into various municipalities, and with that happening, you lose all control over what's developed there to begin with. So you end up with both losing the land and getting the development, which some may have opposed at the time that it was proposed.
Very correct. In Highlands of Heritage, I'm sure it would have been very easy for Highlands, for Mr. Williams, to annex into the city of Lebanon and build Highlands of Heritage. But he came to our Board of Trustees, specifically to me, when he started to build that, and he said, I want to keep Highlands of Heritage Hill in the township. He said, I want it to be a township property. And he was able to negotiate with the city of Lebanon to have water. But that wound up being a fantastic development. One of the nicest subdivisions that we have in Union Township, built right up against an industrial park. So, we didn't take any action. I'm not trying to be vague. We're just saying we're doing our best as trustees to look out for the greater good of the whole township.
Thank you.
Well, that's why I called you up, is we respect your opinion, number one, and number two, you are the direct representative of the folks of Union Township. And as you said, we get it, and everybody kind of wants everything to remain the same forever, and it doesn't necessarily remain the same. And what we process are not just probable outcomes, but all of the outcomes of action or inaction. And so those are all the variables that we try to consider when we're coming into a situation like this, which is not easy. I mean, there are very, very reasonable positions on both sides of, wait a second, this is all residential around us, and it's already residential, keep it that way. Don't do that. And there's also a position of, I'm a private property owner. The law says I can do blank. Other neighbors are doing blank. And if you don't do this, then I've got another political jurisdiction that wants me to do this, and none of us are gonna have a say about it. I mean, that is the reality right now.
That's the reality. Like my mom said, a rock in a hard spot.
Well, thank you for throwing the rock up our way.
You're welcome.
All right.
You're welcome.
Thanks,
Thank
Cook. Very good. Any other trustees?
Good morning,
Morning.
Good morning.
Commissioner Young, Commissioner Jones. Fred Vonderhaar. Do I need to give my address? Thank you. Back to your question that you asked Mr. Cook. The safety issue is my concern. The residents that are at the end of Lebanon Road, there's no way out. They're in the back. There was times last year that there was vehicles parked on Lebanon Road that would be a hindrance to the fire department, life squad, any of that kind of stuff for the people back there. I'm a little shaky. I'm not used to doing this.
You're doing fine.
We can talk foreign, but I can't do it. So that is my major concern. Going over different types of I-1, I-2 ground here and there. We want to make sure that the residents there at the back of Lebanon Road in Kingsway have safe living back there. And I agree with everything you brought up, that you are in control. That's why Union Township is not saying anything one way or the other. It's your decision. And with that in mind, I know you'll do the best for Union Township, and I thank you for that.
Thank you.
Any other questions to me?
No, sir.
Got it? Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I believe Chris said all the trustees are present, and I don't know the new trustee, if she wants to speak. You might not know her.
Good morning.
Good
morning.
morning.
My name is Rhonda Cockerham. I'm
Can you
newly
pull the
elected.
microphone down towards
You
you?
can pull it down a little bit. There you go. Thank you.
My name is Rhonda Cockerham, and I'm newly elected as Union Township trustee. I'm pleased to meet you all today. This is my first month in office, and I don't bring a lot to the table, I don't think, but this is a great experience for me to be a learning, lesson, and I appreciate being here today. And the main reason that I came out not only is to learn, but is because I care about our residents deeply. And I want to do anything that I can to help them, but I'm learning my boundaries and just the job itself. But I look to Chris Cook and I look to Mr. Fred Vonderhaar. They will help me, and I just want everybody to know that I just have a big heart for everyone and want to do the best to serve to my ability. And I thank you, and I feel like that you all have a lot on your shoulders, and I trust that you'll make the right decision. So thank you for your time.
Nice
Very good.
meeting you.
Welcome to office.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to hear from the city, if the city has any comments. You've been discussed a lot here, so.
Appreciate the opportunity. Scott Bronca, City Manager. And I know I sent out some previous correspondence that kind of outlined the city's position on this. A couple things. The annexation, term is being thrown around quite a bit. I can tell you that annexation of this property was nowhere on the city's radar kind of leading up to this process. So, yes, we have a future land use map that kind of identifies potential growth areas. Many of those areas, never come to fruition. So I think, there's a couple things that's concerning to the city. I think we're probably going to mirror a lot of the comments that you're going to hear from the residents, but 75% of this property is proposed for an I-2 zoning designation. So I-2 is heavy industrial. The city only has one property right now that's zoned I-2, and that's the Ernst Concrete Facility. So when you reference Lebanon Industrial Parks, that's I-1 zoning, which is light industrial. For us, there's a big difference between an I-2 and an I-1 zoning designation, and I'm not really sure I understand why, for a light industrial business incubator, you even need the I-2 zoning designation. So that's a concern on what could happen with the I-2 zone property, which is frankly the majority of the land. You referenced the future land use plan for the city that identifies it as an innovation district. Our innovation district, so there's wording in there, first of all, for light industrial, but second of all, for development that's compatible with adjacent residential uses and neighbors. So we recognize that in some of these future land use areas, there's already residential properties, residential neighborhoods, and want to be sensitive to any sort of new development and how that corresponds with those properties. I think one of the other main concerns that we have with the PUD being proposed is those buffers and those setbacks are actually being reduced. So, I think our intent with something like this would be to enhance buffers and setbacks when you're talking about industrial development next to residential properties or next to our park, frankly. And this PUD actually appears to do the opposite, which is concerning. Utility service, so I don't know if that's going to come up or not. It is a criteria in the kind of the decision making matrix. I can tell you, as it stands right now, the city will not be providing water or sewer service to this development. We don't feel like it's compatible with the adjacent uses and aren't supportive of it. So, I do think that's a question that would need to be answered prior to any rezoning, especially when you're talking about an industrial park, is how is water and sewer going to be accessed? Again, with kind of this annexation discussion, we would not annex a property for this type of development. We're not supportive of it. If, and again, that's an if, it were ever to be annexed, our code requires it to come into the city as a professional office zoning district. So, again, big difference between a PO zoning designation and an I-2 zoning designation. So those are kind of, I guess, my initial thoughts. And like I said, a lot of our other concerns, I think, are probably going to be more appropriately voiced by your residents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Very good. Michelle, Chris was here earlier. That was actually next on my list. Okay, give me an update on water and sewer. What is going on here?
So, very simple. Water and sewer cannot be provided to this property from Warren County. We are not in this area. We don't go anywhere north of 71. Well, actually north of Mason Marl Mill Grove, even close. So we are nowhere in this area for water or sewer, so we will not be able to provide service.
Okay. Let me go back to the applicant. Mr. Holden? Being a guy in that business and doing some of that type of work, that's kind of a big deal, right?
I completely understand. Two things. The current Water District Authority map shows this parcel is not in Lebanon's authority. That doesn't mean that they can't provide it. That just means I have another option.
Well, they just told you, though, they're not going to provide
Correct.
it.
They just, if we go this route. So we have other options. So the two other options that we have is Western Water has a 20-inch main that they said would service the property. I'm in that business. It's not adjacent, but the way the language reads for your decision on one of those is it available? That's a stage 2, stage 3 question. We still have to go through 2 more stages. Today we're talking about zoning. It is available.
I don't know that it is complete. I think it's germane to this discussion to get residents completely worked up that this is happening.
Yeah.
If in reality, water and sewers not gonna serve this, everybody's upset that now we have I-2 in our backyard.
Absolutely.
So I think it is relevant to this discussion.
I'm just going off of the text in the description that it just says available. That's what, I mean,
This is not in Western Waters territory, correct, Chris? This is in Warren County's territory, and the only way that the Western Water Company could provide a utility to this property is if this board released that territory to Western Water. So
Okay.
that is not an option without this board taking an action.
Is it in Warren County or is it in the city of Lebanon?
It's in Warren County. I know we did the one release across the road.
we have Scott will reference the agreement if you want.
Yeah, I can leave a copy of this. This is the agreement between the city of Lebanon and Western Water that defines this property as being in the city of Lebanon service area, so.
Okay.
Okay.
Glad to leave
That-
that with you.
I asked for authority map from Warren County Water and Sewer, so I'm not saying which one's right or wrong, I've just got different information.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's saying leave a contract here, and in the contract,
yeah.
there's been an agreement here, so that would supersede what the map is saying.
I agree. I mean, it's information that I didn't have available.
Yeah.
With that being said, we've talked to South Lebanon, okay, and there's another option there. I think that my discussion with South Lebanon was pretty straightforward. They want to know what you decide before they would pursue providing utilities. So it was like, again, the ball's in your court. I think after this conversation, assuming the scenarios, assuming you guys vote for it and it gets approved.
This would be the first time South Lebanon cared what we thought about anything, which is really telling.
Well,
Provided their own utility.
that's exactly what I was
They had
told.
it, you know?
I was
Send it down to
told,
their treatment plant? I don't know.
well, I was told they're gonna leave the door open if it gets approved. And where it all comes together is working with Union Township, possibly a JED. There's options. I think at this stage, more detail needs to be pursued in that realm to make that work. But the question was simply asked, would you support this? There's funding available, so the Ohio Future Fund has money, $750 million available to provide to South Lebanon if they want to do something like this. And I've been told about other things too.
Are you
That's,
contiguous?
no, it'd be through Union Township that is contiguous. I'm not, and it would be through the JED, which would open up more properties than just me.
But the JED doesn't exist.
The only thing that exists that I'm aware of is Union Township voted to start the process. There's nothing formed, there's nothing in contract yet. But it would have to involve other properties. It wouldn't just be for this. So it's more to talk about than me standing here, but there's another option, we'll say. And going back to the available, is it available? Yeah, it's available with Lebanon. So how do you answer that question? I'm looking at your points to approve, and it just says available.
Yeah, but this is also a PUD, so we have the ability, we're looking at an opportunity to negotiate a PUD, and I'm not interested in negotiating a PUD for which water and sewer is not a part of that process,
Yeah.
especially when you start Hail Marrying it with South Lebanon. If you followed anything with our board, not that I would expect you to do so, like that doesn't hold a lot of weight or comfort with us since they're not in the utility business and they're often shirking their responsibility to serve on to the county. So I guess I'm super sympathetic to what you're trying to do. And I really appreciate and believe that you are sincere, that you and your wife desire to do this incubator. What I'm, really sensitive to is the, all of the correspondence that we've gotten from residents and hearing that affirmed by the city of Lebanon and what their intention would be if the property were there leads me to, that has me look at these, decision-making matrix very, very differently. And it seems to me that, that the I-2 portion of this is what's really a hindrance, and I don't see how you overcome that at this juncture. I can't imagine there's anybody else in this room that's gonna be testifying in ways to overcome that, but that's sort of where.
So what specifically with the I-2? So I want to address that. We've got, I think there's 13 prohibited uses on the heavy use of the I-2, and one of them, Mr. Brunca mentioned, we can't do what he just said, they're only I-2 spot, we can't do
Why
that.
didn't you go for I-1? Why are you wanting I-2?
Two reasons.
Or, I'm backwards, why are you?
Two reasons. So one reason is to pick up a couple more uses, because the Brent Spence Bridge and the Western Hills Viaduct project, while they might not be here local, the business impact of that is great. So our business sells steel, we sell rebar, we sell sheet piling, we sell H-piling for bridges. We can offer another service by fabricating products with that to sell to that project and to sell
So
to
you're
projects like
looking
that.
for this, for you to be able to do.
That was our example, okay, that's our example. The other 3 lots, there might be 75% of the land, but there's only 3 other lots that this applies to have power line easements and actually the creek and the pond and the other one. So what they can actually do, what we can build there is restricted to about a third of those lots, and the rest is yard space.
All right, before we get into specifics of that, go back to the topic du jour, which is utilities. And by the way, I don't think I've ever been more proud of you, Commissioner Jones, and what you just said about South Lebanon. It's just straight out of my own heart. I appreciate that.
Well, I've been sitting here too.
It's, let's just say I'm not on their Christmas list, I don't think, Christmas card list.
Well, that was a new mayor, I've never met her before. And,
Oh,
Yeah, 100%, 100%.
I'm just
looking
passing
Yes,
along
we're
our
looking
conversation.
forward to a
To
new
a new-
relationship.
Yeah.
There's a new beginning.
Yeah, I'm-
path forward.
So we talked about water briefly, and I think I get the gist of that. Tell me briefly about your sewer plan.
It's the same. It's one and the same. So there's 2 things. We can pursue the way the ground lies. If the far-fetched, the Hail Mary, as Sharon she's calling it, it accommodates us to go underneath 71 and service not only the area that is outside of my property, but also to the south of 71 for South Lebanon to bring sewer up there to justify all this. On the flip side, I did talk to the Public Works Director at City of Lebanon, and this is off-the-record conversation, stated that the manhole sitting at Arrow Springs, just south Lebanon Road, was designed to pick up these properties, okay? So Michelle mentioned 89 homes just on my property, not to mention the property to the south mixed use. So Mr. Brunca might say, he said in the last meeting, we're not providing utilities. It's the city council's decision. He doesn't have the authority to do that, and I don't mean that negatively to Mr. Brunca, but that hasn't been asked. I haven't presented to them yet, and it is available. Sewer is right there. Water is currently serving the property in the form of a water service, and that quantity is there. What we need is there. It is there. So I go back to the negotiation part, that word that you brought up. Right now, the zoning and the actual authority is in your court. I'm new to this process. I don't know how much that weighs on a city providing. When they provided water to Homerama next to their industrial park, was the precedent set? Is this unique? I'm asking questions, okay? Because there has been a precedence to expand the water.
I think our prosecutor could probably answer that there is discretion amongst body politics, that specific circumstances of why you choose to serve one area and not another. Just because you chose to serve one doesn't mean it's carte blanche for everybody, correct?
That was a unique one, Heritage, because the city agreed to provide sewer to it. And that was a win for everyone because it stayed in the township. It's very unusual for a city to agree to do that. And the city, had its industrial park right next door, so it was clear today that they're not willing to accept this. And I think there's one thing that might be missed on everyone hearing this discussion today, and that is property owners can apply for an annexation, which this board can even grant, or deny, but grant. That doesn't mean the city has to accept that annexation. And we've had annexations approved by this board, one that I recall historically to the city of Lebanon. They did not accept it. So that's in the city's discretion to decide to do. And whether they would be willing to accept an annexation is exclusively their decision to make.
And we just received testimony from their city manager saying that they would not take it under this zoning. I believe, Mr. Bronca, you can confirm that you were only gonna do it under office, correct?
Yeah, I think, you know, the city, you know, would not annex this property the way it's being proposed, with the I-2 zoning, and the reduced buffering. That's just not how we do development. You know, if the property were to be annexed, and that's a policy decision, that, you know, really hasn't had any discussion because it's not on our radar, our code requires that the property come in as a professional office zoning designation.
Well, I mean, Bruce, correct me if I'm wrong here, but as running this meeting, I'm thinking that no matter, I stand by my comments. I think you're very reasonable. I don't fault you at all for trying to grow your business, trying to enhance and turn, 30 acres of somewhat vacant property into something unique or something cool or something. I get it. However, in the context of there are surrounding property owners that have a say, and that is part of our decision-making process, is looking at the totality of all these factors. And I have a feeling that no one's gonna be jumping up and down on your behalf saying, let's put, I-2 zoning in this area. They're just not. And before we even kind of release the hounds, I don't think that this is ripe for consideration simply because that primary issue of water and sewer has not been asked and answered. It just hasn't. And if you came in with a more supportive plan of, hey, I want to do business incubators, I want to put this back here, I'm going to mound, I'm in the construction business, I'm going to make a 20-foot mound and put pine trees all around it, no one's going to see this property, we want to do this, we're going to, be in the township, we're going to have some jobs created here. And by the way, we're not going to put up 89 units of apartments, which is a big deal to the residents. Just, we've seen that too many times. We fight those all over the place in this county, which is a big deal. That you want to do something. I'm just saying the something that you're proposing with 75% of the property being heavy industrial, and you just testified the fact that your business is actually going to benefit from that, and God bless you for doing that,
To
that
an
you,
extent, yeah.
that you want to manufacture your product for these bridge and again, God bless you, that's great, and you want to do it somewhere, and hey, I own this property. I get it,
Yeah.
but it's not zoned for it.
Correct.
And for us to go through that process and change this zoning when water and sewer is not available from us, and the city is testifying saying, not from us under this utilization, then I don't see a path forward for you.
Can I ask Mr. Bronco a question?
100%.
So what's the current zoning of the landfill? Is it sanitary landfill? Because it can't be zoned professional office. Because you can't build an office.
Yeah, I don't know, I think we have like a recreational zoning district, I'm not sure, I haven't checked to see if
It's like an overlay use.
Yeah, but you can't build on the landfill, obviously. there's
Correct.
restrictions for
Now,
that.
when you refer to your annex code, are you referring to language that states if it's gonna be annexed, it's gotta be similar to adjacent properties? Is
No,
that-
our code
what does that
stipulates
say?
any property annexed south of Turtle Creek Union Road comes in as professional office. Any property annexed into the city north of Turtle Creek Union Road is rural residential. That's the that's the default zoning, yeah.
Because I hadn't seen that. Okay. I just wanted to clarify that. I wanted to know what that was, because our thinking behind the I-2 was we are bordering a sanitary landfill. No matter what anybody wants to talk about, you can't build on it. you know, so it's not a bike park zoning, it's a landfill, so the adjacent zoning was worse than an I-2. That was the justification there. Moving forward, if we address these issues, I can see more support in one direction, but I've still, as the landowner, I still got to consider what his proposal looks like versus what we're here talking about.
Again, I think the consensus of the board is we love small businesses in Warren County. And just so the residents know our position, it's perfectly clear, we are big on balanced growth in this county. We cannot be just a residential bedroom community. Because if that happens, more rooftops means more families means more kids means expand your school, and who's paying for it under Ohio law? The only people there are the taxpayers. The families are paying for it. So that's why we emphasize economic growth and development and bringing in businesses, because that helps all of us offset our property tax burden. And in certain parts of this county, we've been super successful at doing that. Other parts of the county, we struggle. So I'm not saying this isn't a viable place to do business. Again, you're right. There's an overlay of a highway, you're minutes from an interstate. That is a natural place to have business operations. However, you're taking it to literally like the extreme business operations, even though it's back and it's in the back of the property or what have you. Industrial, heavy stuff, fabricating steel, some of the heaviest usage that you can have. 18-wheelers, and I know you've got a few for the small business, that predates zoning that's already there. But you're asking us as representatives of the people to say, this is reasonable. And we encourage this. And again, maybe it is in the context of, hey, there's the big bad city that's going to do this and we're not even sure what we're going to get. But the city is not just representing, they're being very clear and telling us that's not going to happen under this zoning. So I would suggest to you, rethink the plan of, we're not saying no to something, because again, I've said this to residents and they don't always like it. Hey, you want that field behind your house to remain a field indefinitely? You need to buy it. You know, we're all about private property owner rights in this county, and we don't like government telling us what to do with our property or what have you. But this is a little unique because it's, you're asking government to change from what you purchased it within the last couple of years, and you knew what it was, and you knew the utility situation when you made your free market decision, and God bless you for doing it inside of the county. As a Warren County born and raised guy, we appreciate that. But now you're saying, we're not just gonna change this, we're gonna change this a lot. And so I think that's where, again, without unleashing the hounds of why this is so bad, that's where I'm coming from, and I don't know that we really need to continue this much more.
Yeah, I have a procedural question, because in that, I mean, I think it's clear if we brought this to a vote where this would go. What I don't know is if there is an opportunity to, if there's value in continuing this
To revise.
to be able to revise it, or does it have to go back to RPC and the BZA before coming back to us?
I think it would change the character of it such that it would need to go back through the process. I mean, if he was to concede today, well, we will scrap the I-2 and go with just an I-1, maybe that merits some discussion, but because that is more intense than the current zoning, even at that, I think it needs to start over.
Thank you, that was my question as well.
Yeah, you're right.
So, and also on a procedural matter, I hope everyone's listening. If they feel compelled to speak today, I guess you should afford them that opportunity. But I would think after what I'm hearing, they're assuming they're listening.
Bird in the hand, Bruce, bird in the hand. Well, and look, there has been lots and lots and lots of correspondence that I suspect from many of the people who are sitting in this room. I mean, we have heard.
It's part of the record.
Yeah, I'm wondering though, what I'm gathering then is that perhaps what is the delicate way to move forward? Is it to take a vote and deny it, or is there a withdrawal, or, because it doesn't sound like continuing this is really prudent.
That would be up to the applicant whether he wanted to withdraw or not. And if he didn't, then the first option would definitely be appropriate.
So I guess.
Do we have any wiggle room on like his permitting fees or anything, since he's already paid them once on this? Can we, if he redoes it and?
I'm getting pointed at from the audience. We do have hard cost, and that's what those are intended to cover. You do have wiggle room. Your zoning code allows you to do so, but certainly any hard costs, I would recommend that you don't make an exception for those.
Fair enough. So what I'm saying, I'm trying to throw you a bone on potentially coming back with a different plan.
Yeah, I
maybe
appreciate
ask
that.
for some considerations on some of the fees.
My other question would be related, you might be able to answer this. Can you vote to approve it with heavy contingencies, and that's just a question there. That it's kind of what you're asking, but
Yeah, what he's saying though is that that based on what he's hearing us talk about, it would change the proposal so substantially
That is a
that it would
different
require you
proposal.
going back.
okay.
Right, and then it is the process of thinking about the residents. Oh, it's zoned this, but yet it's an agreed to PUD, so we have to restrict boom, 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 and boom.
Mm-hmm.
Why get it so worked up if that's really not going to be the intended use? We should use it to something more specific, especially in the context of, as it stands right now, water and sewer is not available. We would like to get it to you if we think it's in, the community's interest to kind of partner with you on that. But as it stands right now, I mean, there's.
Yeah, my justification for why I'm here without that is that's a stage 2 or 3 question, and the details of that, I see your point, obviously, but that was, we're gonna address that. It's much like, Mr. Vonderhaar said in the safety. I'm really concerned about that too. There's a reason why I got ODOT involved. It's not just the right of way for the utilities, it's the right of way for the road. There's been options floated out there about reconfiguring that road. So there's a lot. I understand that whole process of the construction side and what's needed, but there's a lot that has to go on there that I was under the impression that was a stage 2 and stage 3. We're going to answer those then. This is just talking about the zoning itself. And then
Well, let me respond to that. If you look over at the screen, the commissioners are required to consider at stage 1 under the paragraph, I think it's H, I can't
H.
see it, it's being blocked by that.
It's H.
Yeah.
Public utilities is a requirement that they have to consider.
yes, they got to consider if they're available, not if they're being denied
And they're
or
not.
not. But
Tomato, tomato.
There you
I don't think
go.
they're available.
we've talked about that. But exactly.
Well, I guess maybe in just thinking about this, my instinct is I don't want you to feel like you're under duress here because you're not. But what I'm wondering is if we continue this, you may choose prior to the next hearing to withdraw your application if you can't. Like, I don't want to keep you from being able to talk to parties to see if there's a way forward.
Right.
I suspect that if there is a way forward, and I believe there probably is some sort of way forward, it's still gonna require you to start at the beginning, and I think you heard the board president say that, we would be open to some, to the extent we can, waiving some fees because of this, but, I guess I'm feeling like I don't want you to do that if you still want to have a conversation with those, whether in this room or other parties, because you
Yeah,
can
well-
always withdraw.
Yeah, we'll leave it in your court. Do you want us to continue it to where maybe you can think a little bit more on, do you want to continue this? Or do you want us to make a decision now? I'll give that to
So
you.
that's exactly what I was thinking about. I think it would be wise for all of us to continue the conversation so that it gives me the opportunity to go back look at some things and possibly withdraw and or restart the process. Does that
Well,
make sense?
I think that, let me be clear.
Okay.
The only way I would continue this is you're saying you want to withdraw. Because continuing the process and having more conversations about your current application means I've got to listen to all these folks right now, and.
Well, there's
God-
some,
God
there,
love 'em,
there are
but-
some people here to support it.
but there-
Not as
but
many,
there are,
but.
God love them, but the, I think that and again, the community has an important voice in this, but ultimately it is our decision. And I'll remind folks of the story that Bruce knows very well. When I first took office, there was a development in Orgonia called San Margale, and people hated that. People came back, and somehow, I've been on the job like 30 seconds, and I had to negotiate this thing. And negotiated the best way I thought I could. The board unanimously said yes to what we negotiated, and there was 200 people a night in here, that this is terrible, don't do it, don't do it. And they actually took it to referendum, which means our decisions on things like this are subject to a vote of the people. And they took it to referendum, even though there was 200 people that were so adamantly opposed to this. Our position passed 70-30, that the residents of Turtle Creek Township actually supported what we did. So the folks that show up and are most directly affected, and I think that's what Trustee Cook was kind of saying is, yeah, it's important, but we've got to look at the macro environment too, of what's good for the entire county. And again, doing something on your property is, I think, very viable and important. We want you to do that something, but heavy industrial without the access to the utilities and not having that worked out, when paragraph H says we have to consider that right now, I just don't see a path forward. So my only option of either rendering a decision right now or continuing it would be, do you want us to decide or do you want to withdraw? That's my question.
I see. So with that being said, we will withdraw our current application. This is not over. We will be back, and we will be talking about this in more detail in the near future.
Yeah.
To discuss all of that, and to make a point to the residents behind me, is I do care about being a resident. We're going to keep our business there, and I wanted this to be something that we could, play together in the same area type of thing. Like, it was going to work. My intentions anyway. The industrial was to keep it flexible because that's where the need is for this incubator. So I want to stress that wasn't a wild hair idea on our part. That's where the need is. So we need to regroup and go back and look at, the impact of that and what we should do to make this work, basically.
And again, we're here to try to help you with your business. We love
Absolutely.
small businesses in Warren County. We bend over backwards, especially if this was appropriately zoned. We'd be trying to come up with ways of making sure you did this here.
Yeah,
But it's just,
absolutely.
it's not the exact situation that we have right now. There was a lot of variables. So
That's
again,
fine.
we want to help you with something. How we define something is open to discussion, but that something is not what we see right this second. And so we appreciate.
And this was extremely valuable to make something work in the future. I think you guys got great points that'll be addressed and to make this work.
Very good. So since the applicant withdrew his application, on the record, we will end this party, or I guess hearing, I guess I should say, and we will move forward. Everybody enjoy your Tuesdays. Thank you.
Do you need a motion to move into executive session? So I move that the board go into executive session to discuss imminent litigation with legal counsel present pursuant to ORC 121.22 G3.
Second roll call? Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Hey, good meeting you.